This is an Irish independent podcast.
Colm Keys is over in Dallas for the Irish Independent. We'll be talking to Colm very shortly. He was at the open workout last night. Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano, Jake Paul, Mike Tyson. Press conferences this evening. Weigh-in on Thursday and then fight night. Friday night, Saturday morning, 3 a.m. is when Serrano and Taylor will be in the ring. 4 a.m. for Tyson against Paul. And we'll see what Colm has to say about the whole experience thus far. Ronan Mullen, hello.
Hi, Joe.
So I guess with Serrano, Katie Taylor, increasingly there is just a sense of this is going to be razor thin and who knows, for all the right reasons. And then for Tyson Paul, also razor thin, unknowable, hard to predict for all the wrong reasons. This is an interesting question of handicapping. To what extent is 58 years old versus 27 years old offset by legendary all-time ability versus not even international ability, really? And I think it's kind of like it's if you weren't being po-faced about these things, it's an interesting handicapping. It's actually, I couldn't say for sure, you know? So in that sense, it's job done. In another sense, dear God, what a circus. And bring it on. I think most people are saying Friday night. Not Mike Costello, sorry. He's getting up and going to bed the second it's over.
Absolutely. There's so many good adages in boxing, like styles make fights. You know, all these ones that are borrowed from other sports. With judging, it's what you like. You know, these kind of frustrating boxing adages. Another one that people might be familiar with is when a fighter's on the decline or entering the autumn/winter of their career, it's the last thing to leave you is your power. And Mike Tyson was one of the most powerful punchers, if not the most powerful puncher ever. So is there a time parameter limit on that though? Like, you know what I mean?
As in?
Several decades have passed now. I'm sure the power, if it hasn't fully left him, it's not quite what it once was.
Can't be what it was. ESPN reporting that 7 states in the US not even taking bets on this fight.
That's remarkable, isn't it?
It's like this is
like you know they take bets on WrestleMania, which is literally like choreographed, and they're looking at this and they're like, no.
Well, that's the situation. So you can't even bet in this fight in 7 states. We should just briefly mention Andy Farrell has named his team for Friday. Another Friday night game. We'll be talking about this in a bit of detail tomorrow on our rugby slot. But just to mention, he has not torn up the script. It's actually, there's a degree of, you were all rubbish. Now get back out there and sort it out next week. Quality to the team. So it's Hugo Keenan, Mac Hansen and James Lowe as the back 3. And then the front 8, no changes. Back out you go. Sort it out between yourselves. Andrew Porter, Ronan Kelleher, Finlay Beelum. It's Joe McCarthy and James Ryan, second row. And then Tyg Byrne once again at 6. Josh van der Fleer, 7. Caelan Doris is 8 and captain. And then on the bench, Rob Herring once again at hooker. Cian Healy is there. Thomas Clarkson could be one of 2 debutants off the bench from Leinster, tight head. Ryan Baird is brought onto the bench as well as second row cover. Ian Henderson drops out. Peter O'Mahony keeps his place on the bench. And then Craig Casey comes in for Conor Murray. Sam Prendergast comes in for Kieran Frawley. Again, like Thomas Clarkson could make his debut for Ireland. And Jamie Osborne makes up the 23. So a few changes on the bench, a little bit of rejuvenation. But in the main, it is a case of Andy Farrell saying that was so bad. Just go out there and prove everybody wrong.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, the Craig Casey one seems indicative of what Farrell is projecting he might need in the last 20 minutes as compared to last weekend. The point has been made that he kind of maybe foresaw that he was bringing on replacements to close out a game, whereas the fact that Casey and Prendergast, like it's interesting, we kind of pigeonhole Craig Casey as an upcoming hot young thing, but he's in his mid-20s. He's an established player. But I would have thought bringing Prendergast on with Murray would have made more sense, where he could have managed him through what could be a tricky last 15-20 minutes if he's introduced. But
could be.
It's an interesting selection, even though there's not wholesale changes. I think the changes that are made are representative of the thought process.
It all feels like they really like Prendergast and they're just saying, right, let's just speed this situation up. I think. We'll talk about it tomorrow on the rugby podcast. So, come here, we may not talk again about this situation on Friday night. Whatever about Tyson Paul. I mean, who knows? You've given me the heebie-jeebies about the judges with this Taylor Serrano fight. You've basically made me think, it's going to be near impossible for Taylor to get the nod. Is how you have me thinking about this fight.
You normally caveat these things, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. But now you're literally just saying this.
I'm including body language. I'm including all sorts of communications. Taylor's last 11 fights have gone the distance, so she's not going to knock out Amanda Serrano most likely. This is going to be a judge's situation, and I'm just picturing Jake Paul bringing the judges out for dinner, staying in a nice hotel. Jake Paul paraphernalia all over their rooms, like goodie bags, pictures of Amanda Serrano. As part of that, she's on his books. I just kind of think, I don't like the smell of it.
No tax in Texas, of course, so they're bringing home a lot of money.
Does it not depend on where you reside, though?
Possibly, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe.
By all accounts, they're going to be...
If you do a Nixer in Texas, do you pay tax here?
That's interesting, actually. But
so what are you saying?
I actually think she's going to win conclusively enough that it won't be an issue. And it's funny, like, rematches tend to happen in quick succession, but as you pointed out yesterday, there's a significant gap here. Taylor has been through, like, 2 frenetic contests with Chantel Cameron. Like, this weekend, as difficult as it's going to be, those were extremely difficult fights, possibly the most difficult of her career, and she came through them.
She came through one of them.
Yeah, but she held her own, and, like, she lost against Chantel Cameron the first time, but it wasn't as if she was knocked out or anything like that. You know, she held her own.
I don't think she'll be knocked out on Friday.
No. I'm just saying she's been battle hardened in those 2.5 years in a way Serrano possibly hasn't. Katie Taylor will be a significant step up in opposition for her again. Okay. Whereas I think Taylor, having fought Cameron twice, this isn't it won't be a shock to the system when the first bell goes. She's been performing at this level for the interim period.
So Taylor to win conclusively enough that the judges have no choice.
Yeah, what's the other boxing phrase? You need to knock her out to get a draw. So, like, that kind of thing. I think it is going to be, it's going to be tough. Like, the odds are stacked against her, but the odds have been stacked against her for her whole life, it seems like, in many ways, and she's come through. So okay. I'd give her the edge here, yeah.
Colm Keys is in Dallas. Colm, hey.
Joe, how are you?
How'd you land this gig?
Well, if you remember the Shawshank Redemption, when Andy does the tax returns for all the prison officers, and he gets Red out of the wood shop for once a month, and Red says that was fine by me. Well, I suppose I fell into this. Sean McGoldrick retired, obviously. Before that, Vincent Hogan has also moved on. Unfortunately, both have left us. So I don't think it was a case of last man standing, but I did have some limited boxing experience of coverage further back. So I picked that up again. And to quote Red, that was fine by me. Out of the wood shop for a month. Great.
Excellent. I see what you did there. I thought you were going to draw a parallel between doing tax returns and having to attend GAA matches, but you definitely swerved that one.
There is a bit of that, and when you sit into a press briefing, as I did, it was a round table last night at the Toyota Music Factory, not far from the AT&T. It's in Irving, which is between Fort Worth and Dallas, closer to Dallas. And all the pre-fight events were taking place in the Toyota Music Factory. And I was in for a round table, which was limited enough in terms of media, where Jake Paul and Tyson and Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano, all the main protagonists were brought in for 10 minutes or so. And it's only when you listen to Jake Paul and Mike Tyson, and you just such a world difference in terms of communication, and that's across a lot of sports too. I recognize that, but it is quite a difference. It is quite a difference from the routine standard post-match GA interview. I don't even say pre-match because there's so little of that. But in terms of reach to media and to audience and everything like that, it's just a world of a difference.
No, it's the big time. You're not in Kansas anymore.
That's it.
So in Taylor and Serrano, there's a sense of this fight bringing total respectability almost to the evening, which without them would feel a lot less respectable. There are 280 million Netflix subscribers worldwide, and you made the point in your piece today, this has the potential to be the most watched female sporting event of all time. Up for grabs is obviously the undisputed light welterweight champion, Chip Belt, and they're both. I mean, it was reported after MSG they both earned in excess of $1 million each. That has gone up several notches here. So Katie Taylor will have the biggest purse of her career, $6 million, and Serrano, who kind of has home fighter status. Is that part of the thinking here? She'll pull in $8 million. But I suppose the point I'm making in terms of scale and finances, this is another step forward. This is big time.
Yeah, this has really accelerated female boxing. That was being touted last night by numerous. One of the Jake Paul's co-promoter was into the round table, and he made that point. If even a fraction of a Netflix viewership tunes into this, streams this, then it's going to be the biggest female sports event. So I was trying to think, well, can we counter that? What's been bigger? But in the era of pay-per-view, well, there hasn't been much that could probably trump it. I'm sure the Women's World Cup finals goes there, but what is the actual figure that will watch this? It's hard to know. There's about 17 million Netflix subscribers in Britain. There's probably another 500,000 in Ireland. I'm sure quite a few of them will tune in, but you do get that sense that, Kate, this is an away fight for Katie Taylor. It's not on the east coast of America where there's Irish communities. It's not in any of those halls up and down the UK or in Dublin, and that this is very much, even though she's Puerto Rican, New York based, but she's fighting out of the Jake Paul stable, and a lot of the crowd here are really, for Jake Paul, that he is the big draw, and he brings in the money more so than Tyson. I think it probably surprises me in one respect, because if you're of a certain era, you think Tyson is the biggest thing, but Jake Paul is actually reputedly commanding the biggest fee of all, somewhere in the region of $40 million. Tyson's around half that. So he is the promotional vehicle here. He's the mouthpiece for it all. And the others are really in the slipstream in that regard, certainly financially.
You were saying that in her press conference, Taylor last night became uncharacteristically emotional. Yeah,
she was asked by one of the other journalists, it's Gareth Davis, actually, from The Telegraph. He was in on it, about the bond with Bridget, her mother. He asked her how special was that, and she's normally doesn't veer too far off script, but in this instance she began to talk, and then she just stopped and she welled up and she took her time, and nobody asked her a question for maybe 40 seconds. And then another question came in about Deirdre Gogarty and her impact on female boxing, and that 1996 fight on the undercard of Tyson Bruno. And even as she tried to answer that, and Bridget, her mother, is standing to one side, even as Katie went to answer that, there was still that emotion there. So that's not something you would see too often from her, but the question was very much, it obviously struck a chord on this occasion, and it brought that reaction out. And obviously it's a very unique relationship, and a unique relationship in a boxing sense too, is that she is ever present, and that was acknowledged in question, and also in the emotion of the answer too. So it was an unusual, to say the least.
This will be Katie Taylor's 25th pro fight. She's really been busy, certainly the early part of her professional career. But as of Friday, that will be 12 months out of the ring, her longest stint away from the ring. And obviously, but for Tyson's illness in July, the ulcer flaring up on that flight, she would have fought in July. So, events conspire. I guess it's anyone's guess as to whether at 38 being out of the ring for a year is a good thing or a bad thing. She was absolutely unequivocal that it was a good thing. She said, "I feel like the extra break has done me the world of good as well. There were a few things earlier," she's talking about her body and her fitness, "there were a few things earlier in the year that needed to be sorted out, so I feel I'm in much better shape right now." That'll be one of those we'll know on Friday kind of situations, Colm, but it's a lengthy spell out.
It is a long spell out. I mean, if you look back at her career, it's been activity, in her first year, and obviously she's moving fast. She's trying to get up the ladder, so she fights 7 times, And in every year after that, it's somewhere between 4 and 5 that she's fought. And then there's this gap, and obviously it's unenforced. But at 38, do you really know where you are with that length of time? Now, she's obviously had the best of sparring, and she is a ferocious trainer, and she really goes at it with her sparring, and that's renowned, and she doesn't hold back, and you just can't imagine her slacking in any way. And she did make the point that maybe the rest did her good, and maybe as you get older, less is more. And you look at the scale of the fights that she's had with the 2 against Cameron, and then obviously 2.5 years back with Serrano. So these are all really top level fights, and she's able to pick and choose her moments, and she's also able to, take her time in between them and get the recovery and, build up that hunger again. Maybe that wasn't there for the first Cameron fight in middle of 2023. Perhaps that wasn't there. It was obviously recovered last year, but she certainly seems, and in any of the interviews she's conducted in the last few weeks, she's very confident that she's a better fighter, and she's going to be a more patient and a more disciplined fighter on this occasion. And she's put that across quite a bit, because there were times in the previous Serrano fight when she wasn't disciplined. Serrano's a front foot fighter, and she really went at her. And of course, there's that 5th round, as Katie calls it, that 5th round tear up, where it looked, and she doesn't accept that she was in real trouble at the end of it. She says, I took her best shots and I moved on, won the second half of the fight. But it certainly looked like she was in trouble, because she stood her ground and she got involved in a tear up, and she probably came out worse than that. So she has to pick her moments, move around the ring. Serrano is obviously, she's stronger in some respects, and it's hand speed and footwork that really allows Katie to prevail here.
Yeah, that's a bit like Jack Nicklaus saying he never three-putted. I mean, Serrano landed 3 times as many punches in that 5th round. It looked like it was about to be over. So tear up is a very charitable description on Katie's part, I think. We'll hear from the 2 fighters. So their predictions, first of all, how they both see the fight going. Let's have a listen.
I believe I'm just a better fighter, and the best of me always beats the best of Amanda. We made history together, and we get a chance to make history together again on Friday night. This is amazing, and you always need a great dance partner. I think that the both of us really showed up the last time, and we're going to do it again on Friday night.
It's going to be nothing less than the last fight.
Okay. And Amanda, why do you win this fight Friday?
Fighting Katie Taylor is always a great opportunity, but honestly, I believe I'm more focused in this fight. Thank you for making that motivation, giving me that motivation to wake up every morning to go run, to go fight, to go spar, because you bring that out of me, and I'm in the best shape, and you're going to see that come Friday night.
So both talking a big game, as is the way before every boxing fight ever, really. There are a whole array of factors to try and work into this one, Colm. I don't know what the talk is out there. Is there a consensus at all about who's going to win? But we've mentioned Taylor's time out of the ring. We have discussed already yesterday with Mike Costello, Serrano's power absolutely, and she's a 7-weight world champion, her power absolutely translated to 135 pounds in New York 2.5 years ago. Will it translate up to 138? Probably. And then there's also the that hometown fighter aspect. Like, this is Amanda Serrano, who is a Jake Paul fighter, fighting on a Jake Paul card. Again, no suggestions of anything kind of obviously untoward. But, the judges, it's a Jake Paul fight. They're staying in a nice hotel. They're out for dinner. These things are all in the ether. I mean, I guess if Taylor's going to win this fight, there is increasingly a feeling she's going to have to win it by a relatively conclusive margin. She may not just get the decision if this is a very tight fight. So mix all of that up for us and draw some hard conclusions.
I would agree with all of that. As I said earlier, this is probably Katie Taylor's first away fight, if there's such a thing in that respect. She is so used to the crowd being on her side, and crowds impact judges. They're only human. They count what they see, and they count what they count, but they also hear what they hear too. And if there's audible support for Amanda Serrano on Friday night, judges hear that, She is a Jake Paul fighter. He's done a lot for her career, and it seems to me that a lot of support around here, and even at the public session yesterday, they were there for him. There was a few for Tyson, but you could sense it. And even when the fighters were going through their routines in the ring, it was more audible, much more audible for Jake Paul, and certainly maybe to a lesser degree for Amanda Serrano than it would have been for Katie Taylor. You wouldn't be sure what knowledge those fighters would have, or those supporters would have for of Katie Taylor, and perhaps even female boxing. So it is a reach in that respect. I think all Katie Taylor's fights have been the last three, certainly the last three big ones, and even you go back to Pursuit, they've all been so close. And she's got the judgment in most of them. Obviously not the Cameron fight. So I think definitely she has to really get out in front here. She has to. Obviously, knockouts are probably out of the equation. It's been 2019 since her last one. So I think she has to be decisive if she's going to win. And that causes difficulties on what's not her home turf, really. Yeah. So I think it's going to be difficult for her. Obviously, she's 38. Amanda Serrano, can't forget that. She's 36. So she's a bit defined in that respect too. She's fought 5 times since they met in Madison Square Garden. She had a fight in August as well when the previous bout in July was cancelled. She has had that warm up. She probably has that bit of an advantage, but she is reaching up a little bit further than she did before, up to 138, and that probably, even though it seems small, it does present a challenge. But I do think firmly Katie Taylor will have to win this fight decisively if she is to retain.
What's the relationship like between the two of them?
It seems very, very good. One of the questions last night, very pointed, compared Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano as a fledgling female Ali Fraser or Hagler Hearns. Now that's a bit of a leap, obviously, because Ali Fraser was maybe the biggest thing ever in boxing, and certainly in middleweight. Hagler Hearns was just amazing in the 1980s as well. But Katie seems to see this as the biggest rivalry, that this is what pushes through the frontier for female boxing is herself and Serrano, more so than the 2 Cameron fights, way more. That Serrano was the biggest name after her, and it's a sense that you have the 1 and 2, pound for pound, female fighters getting into the ring again, and this can only be not good, great for female boxing with the number of eyeballs that are on it, with the stage. It's obviously home of the Dallas Cowboys. It's in Texas. It just has a much bigger feel, even bigger feel than the intimacy of the Garden. So it's bigger in everything in that respect. It's throwing it out to a wider audience, and they really both share that sense of evangelism about their sport, that they are pioneers, and they recognize that. And you would sense a lot of mutual respect between the two, that they are both driven the same way, that they want to leave that legacy of pushing their sport that bit further. And that would have come across last night, and it's come across quite a bit in the build-up to this fight, that it's more than just a purse, it's more than just belts. It is something much further beyond that for the sport that they have carried. Obviously, Katie Taylor's 8 years a pro, but Serrano's even double that in the professional ranks, so that they feel that this is very much an apex moment to be fighting on this card, in this stadium, in front of that audience on Friday night.
Yeah. Well, let's segue then from what is an apex moment to what other people feel is a nadir straight after them at 4 a.m. There's that that interesting juxtaposition. We'll get to Tyson and Paul via what Serrano and Taylor had to say about it being part of the undercard, because they were asked, what's it like to be on the undercard to this fight. I got the impression that the tone of the question was almost like, is this not a bit beneath you guys, you pioneers, to be part of this almost circus? But they don't see it, and I'm sure they're on message, of course, but I think they very sincerely don't see it that way. So let's have a listen to what they both had to say about that situation, bearing in mind as well Serrano is very much a Jake Paul fighter.
Listen, no matter where we go, me and Katie, no matter who we fight, we're one of the best, we pound for pound, best female fighters in the world. So we're going to put on a show. But honestly, it's an honor to fight under Mike Tyson and Jake Paul. I love fighting under my manager, Jake Paul, because I get to do what I have to do, and then I come out and watch him fight. But it's just, it's a great opportunity for us to be showcased, women's at its finest on Netflix, and I'm excited. We're going to put on a show.
I think I just have a heart of gratitude, really, to have these sort of opportunities. I think every single fighter in the world wants to be on this card, and to be on the same card as Mike Tyson. I don't think anybody would have believed that. He's a legend, an icon of the sport, and to be on the same card as someone who I respect so much is absolutely huge.
I suppose that when you hear Katie talk about a legend and an icon and somebody I respect so much, it does copper fasten something this week, Colm, which is that Tyson, who's, incredibly checkered past, complicated person, I don't know when it happened, he has ascended into the standing of avuncular icon, cherished, loved within the boxing fraternity, no questions asked. That is very much his standing now, listening to all the dispatches this week.
Very much so, and you mentioned the checkered past. I suppose there's an element of irony that Katie Taylor is on the same card as a convicted rapist. That's still there, and obviously those questions have been there about Mike Tyson for a long time. So there is a bit of irony that someone so wholesome as Katie Taylor ends up on the same card, but she's clearly in awe of him. She has repeated that time and again, and she sees him only in a boxing light, and that's been very clear. Tyson has had a lot of trouble in his time. He has acknowledged that. Obviously, alcoholism, drug addiction. He's been to jail. He's had a lot of trouble. So obviously, there's a reformation of sorts here, and boxing. Some elements of boxing recognise that, but I'm not sure all elements, and far from it. I think Eddie Hearn's position on this is quite pointed. He is adamant that when the Taylor Serrano fight is over, he's going to get up from his chair and he's going to leave, and he's not going to watch it because he thinks it's disgusting for boxing, to quote him. He sees it as a repudiation of the sport he loves, that a 58-year-old man is getting into the ring to fight someone who was 27 years of age, and the dangers that brings, and the element of show about it. I suppose it's a confluence of two different boxing worlds. And Jake Paul's people were quite happy to put out there that they're saving boxing. They're bringing a new audience, Gen Z, Gen Alpha. They're bringing all these people into the sport that wouldn't necessarily through, obviously, Logan Paul and all these stage fights, all these show fights. But Jake Paul himself wants to become a serious boxer. And I have to say, looking at him up close up, he looks in good shape. And looking back at some of his footage, he can throw a punch. He may not have the ring craft or anything like it of some of his peers, that's for sure. Yeah. But he's ambitious. Question was put to him last night, where are you in terms of your potential? And he thought around 40-50%, and it would take him another 3 years to get up there. And obviously getting Tyson really gives him a platform that Tommy Fury or Nate Diaz, the UFC fighter that he's fought, none of those give him the platform. So Tyson is very much his vehicle, and a reformed Tyson, because Tyson is adamant the old baddest man on the planet, the old Mike Tyson, means nothing. He's not there anymore. That he's a new man and he's a businessman. And obviously there's 15 or 20 million reasons in terms of dollars as to why Mike Tyson is here. That's the bottom line. He's not looking to rewrite any history about his boxing record. His boxing record stands. He was one of the greatest fighters of all time. Obviously, his personality is checkered, but obviously there's a financial element here, and he's happy to go with that. And Jake Paul is his vehicle for that. Jake Paul has ambition himself. He wants to fight in the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics. He doesn't rate Olympic boxing. He thinks it's going to be far easier to get on the podium than it is to make further progression in the professional fight game. But Tyson is his ticket to the next stage of where he wants to go. And you would have to share the concerns with those in boxing that fear for what might happen, Tyson, because this guy can punch. And obviously there's always that faint hope there that Tyson will open up that left hook and it'll go back 30 years to the way it was. But even physically, looking at him last night, he certainly doesn't look anything like he once did. And obviously the footage and the Netflix trailers that have been out show him in very good light. But I thought looking at him last night, he looked very much his age. And I'm not sure how far he can go in this fight.
That is interesting to hear, because the Netflix footage and the promotional footage makes him look like $1 million, I have to say. And you kind of think, my goodness, I mean, how he's done it, I don't know. But it looked like he was in absolutely phenomenal shape. So that's interesting. Even at 58, all the training you can do, you still look like a 58-year-old, was your sense?
Absolutely. He was behind the mic last night. And you're looking out for that to see how does he look. And I thought he looked 58 years of age. And I'm 54. I thought he looked 58 years of age, I have to say.
You're saying you'd take him, are you?
If I had a head start. At that level, obviously, Joe, he's, I just, by comparison, how they look.
Yeah.
Jake Paul looked an athlete to me last night that I didn't expect, because I wouldn't know a lot about him. I look back at footage and you come into something like this, obviously very skeptical, listening to the likes of Eddie Hearn. Barry McGuigan has been quite vociferous about it, saying this is wrong, this is so bad for Tyson, for the sport of boxing. You get the impression Jake Paul is a complete chancer. Yet you look at him physically and he looks the part. You look at him throwing some of his punches. I'm not saying he's a great fighter.
Yeah.
But he's a strong competitor. And he's the type of person you think that won't have any fear that Tyson's ferocious reputation that would cow most of us, even now, strikes the fear of God into us.
No, it's
you just don't get the sense that's in this.
That's interesting, because look, you can look really, really good for 58, but you stand next to a 27-year-old, you start to just look 58. You just can't cheat the dynamics at play.
Huge difference,
yeah, and
again, this might not amount to anything, and maybe Tyson has that ring craft still, and he has some of the old power left, but you have to doubt it. You have to doubt that he hasn't been gearing towards this for 20 years. It's 19 years since he didn't get out of the seat against Kevin McBride in Washington after the sixth round. He never came out. And he's fought a couple against Roy Jones, an exhibition match that was,
average.
It wasn't sanctioned. Yeah. Obviously the State Commission, Texas, have taken precautions. It's only 8 2-minute rounds. There's the 14-ounce gloves as opposed to the 10-ounce gloves that the heavyweights would normally use. So there's a lot of precautions in that regard. But 8 2-minute rounds for a 58-year-old that hasn't really been gearing towards this for a lot of his life over the last 20 years. And Mike Tyson has had ferocious back and neck trouble as well in that time. You have to believe that he's, as much as he might have prepared well, has he really gone the distance for 8 2-minute rounds? This comes fast and it will come furious. And obviously his best chance is to catch Jake Paul early and catch him good. But the longer this fight goes on, the more those fears that Eddie Hearn has expressed will be ventilated.
Yeah. That's interesting what you were saying earlier about the popularity of Jake Paul. So to the extent that you might anticipate that a fairly healthy quotient of the 60,000, 65,000 through the doors will actually be cheering on Jake Paul?
I would get that sense looking at the public weigh-in. There was a lot of white hats around that I take as part of his, that's part of his identity. I didn't get the sense that there was that many there for Tyson, and certainly for the two female fighters, I wouldn't have thought so. There wasn't a huge crowd there. There was a few thousand there, all right, but I got the sense that it was Jake Paul. He divides people, it seems. Yeah. Some love him, some absolutely love to hate him, and he has no problem with those who love to hate him either. He knows who he is. He knows where he has got to through his social media influencing. Interesting enough, he was asked last night, did he still consider himself a YouTuber? And he doesn't. He's 95% a boxer. YouTube days are largely behind him. He's not an actor anymore. He's not a YouTuber. He's a slight Instagrammer. But boxing is his thing. He has put that across very much, that he is a boxer now, and that's where his ambitions lie over the next 3 to 4 years.
We'll finish off by playing a clip of the two of them just to give people a sense of the dynamic at play. Now, yesterday we did a clip of Jake Paul. It seemed quite sincerely gifting Tyson a pigeon, and Tyson initially saying thank you and then saying he's going to feed it to his falcon, which is a suitably odd moment for a suitably odd event. But here they are, and it's initially Paul talking about what it would mean if he was to knock Tyson out or to win the fight.
Obviously, it would be the biggest moment in all of boxing history when I put this man to sleep.
He dreams a lot. This is not going to come true, young man.
I respect your opinion, but it's just my time. The universe know it, the gods know it, I know it, and you're going to know it. Plain and simple.
Okay, for next week, we'll see. I think he thinks this is going to be a very easy night. This is not going to be an easy night.
Why does Mike Tyson win this fight?
Because I'm Mike Tyson.
You know, the gods have showed this to me. I'm going to be faster, stronger. He's not going to know where I'm coming from, and I'm
great imagination.
I'm truly going to show the world that I outboxed Mike Tyson.
I'm ready. Let's go.
Jake?
Let's go.
So there we are. I mean, I'm loath to ask you for a prediction. There are theories this whole thing is choreographed, this second fight. And I saw Gav Casey point out, ESPN are saying that, so gambling is legal in about 40 states in America, and 7 of those states are not even permitting betting on this bout. They think it strays too far away from a genuine sporting contest. So that is kind of what we're looking at here. What are your predictions for the two fights, Colm?
I think Taylor will win. I believe her when she says she's a better fighter and she'll be more disciplined. She throws the more accurate punches, and I think that will stand in her favour, and maybe the break does serve her well. So I'd be optimistic from that point of view. While there'd be concerns over her age and the extra year, Serrano's not tracking too far behind her. I think that move up to 138, that can pose challenge. It takes a lot of effort for her to move between the weights. And I think Taylor could be in a good frame of mind. She thinks this is the biggest fight she's ever had. Obviously, it's the biggest stage. And this is one that she really has to be right for. And I think she might have got there. I think Jake Paul wins the other fight once Tyson doesn't put him down in rounds 1 or 2. I think he tires, and I don't know how far it gets. Maybe 3 or 4 rounds. Maybe Tyson doesn't get up off the stool again. But I don't think this goes too far. Maybe it is choreographed to go and take the breathers and, give the crowd what they want over 8 rounds. But I can see Tyson maybe retiring 4 or 5 rounds in, that this is all too much, and I can perhaps see him saying to himself, "What have I got myself into here?" Because it's not as if he has been fighting, on and off in the last 20 years. His life has taken a completely different curve that hasn't taken him to good places. He hasn't led an athletic and healthy life in that time. You just can't imagine that he can switch it on against a strong-looking 27-year-old who may not be a great fighter, but he will compete. And that's the danger, and that's the fear for Tyson. For
all the adrenaline and the pageantry in the statement in the stadium, what an immediately sobering moment when if it comes to pass, 27-year-old beats 58-year-old man. Instantly, this feeling everyone of, ugh, what have we just partaken? Well, ugh, what was this?
It doesn't sound good when you put it like that, does it? It just doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound right. Very, very much staged. And you can see why some of the boxing fraternity and maybe even the boxing royalty, saw an interview with Bernard Hopkins as well, where he's quite opposed to this. You can see why some of them are holding their nose. But this is very much, as I said earlier, a confluence between 2 different boxing worlds. It may not be the old and the new, but it's certainly something related to that the likes of Jake Paul and Logan Paul and KSI and all of these putting on these show fights, that's what people want to see. That's the attention economy. And they are very much bringing the attention economy to the screens in that respect, in that this is the vehicle, the Jake Paul vehicle is very much where the money and where the resources are.
Yeah. Hey, listen, Rocky versus Hulk Hogan. Any other, you care to mention this kind of, freak show's too strong a word, but that kind of weird, kind of a fight you dream up after a few beers, handicapping of 58 with world-class ability versus 27 with no real ability by comparison. It's just the kind of concoction that the fight game has always kind of sold. So we will see.
If you put it this way, Joe, and just a very faint comparison maybe in terms of home, you put a proper boxing night into a local hall, a certain crowd will show up. If you put white collar in, and there's buy-in from it, and there's novelty about it, the place would be packed.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the comparison here. While a routine and regular boxing card will bring in a crowd, a show card like this, like white collar boxing, just brings a whole new audience. And that's what this is about.
It sure is. You'll be writing from Dallas over the next couple of days, Colm. We might chat to you in studio when you're back next week and fully recovered, and you can make sense of it all for us. In the meantime, thanks so much.
That'd be great. Thanks, Joe. Thank you very much.